All right, I'm here with Ted Riter, who's become a friend. Started working with you, Ted, when you were, I think it was through Mike Salemi. I think he made the connection for us, and I had always been apprehensive about, this so-called men's work. And I'm curious to hear from you because I've like fallen in love with you. And my wife, by the way, if she and you were single, I think she'd be like, I need a Ted in my life. Which I'm sure that's not the
Oh,
first time
thanks.
you've heard from the female counterpart in working with men. But describe to me maybe in your own words. This men's work thing, by the way, has become very buzzy
Yes.
in the Instagrams and the podcast space and all over. Every newsletter now, somebody has something for men. But for those who are like apprehensive as I was, um, help me understand, and anybody listening understand, what is the problem that men's work is hoping to fix?
Great question. But first let's go to the apprehensive part.
Yeah, let's do that.
I wasn't apprehensive. I was just a big no. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I don't think this is for me.
You weren't
It's like
dragging your feet.
I don't need that. The crazy thing is that I have a spiritual director I've been with for I think almost 18 years now, who has actually written books on men's work. And even the whole first 10 years or so, or 8 years that I was working with him, I was never interested in it. Like that was for other guys. I didn't need that
Wow.
because I was educated, I was
Sure.
spiritual, I
Sure.
had a great profession. I just felt like I didn't need men. And in fact, I was more comfortable with women.
Hmm. Yeah.
In men, I think I was always holding on to the kind of like the junior high locker room, right? If that's what men are all about, snapping
I don't
each
need
other
any
with
part of that. Yeah.
towels
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. Like I don't need that. I don't need that. So yeah, I didn't had no interest in men.
Did men intimidate you?
I think so.
Hmm. I know that was
Yeah,
true for me. Absolutely.
yeah. It's weird though, because it's two different stories. One is that men are intimidating or assholes. And on the other hand, I grew up at summer camp where I had dear friends who were men.
Hmm.
But it was the negative part that really held sway. And so I didn't need men. I remember going this on a date once with a woman, and we sat down that we I was with this woman. She ran into a friend of hers at a party. We were all sitting on the couch together, and the two of them were catching up. And this other woman said, here's the great thing about the guy I'm dating, this other, whoever this was. He's got all these male friends who are really powerful and supportive and loving. And the two of them were just going off on how beautiful that was. And I was kind of just shrinking, I think. I had no
Wow.
men. I didn't know why it was important to have men. And
So in other words, there was maybe some appeal to having more men, but if alongside men came all of that stuff that was in the locker rooms and the everything else, it's like, it's not really worth the lemon's not worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze or
it wasn't
whatever
worth
the
the
phrase
squeeze.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
worth the squeeze. And I didn't want to do all the guy stuff, whatever the guy stuff was. I didn't have a
Sure.
favorite football team. I didn't have a
Yeah.
favorite beer. I didn't have a favorite whatever. It just felt like I wasn't going to fit into, just the stereotypical here's what men do kind of thing.
How many
Yeah, I'm
men
like,
actually go out and watch football just to make sure that they have something to say intelligent about football when like Thanksgiving rolls around? I know I've been there where it's like I better know something about this because they're going to ask me about the Pittsburgh Steelers or
I,
something.
I would totally read the sports page before going to a
Yeah.
party just in case. Just in case. But it just didn't feel authentic. It wasn't where I wanted to be. And it just felt safer with women.
So what is the problem then that that men's work is hoping to solve? Because we have very, if not, merely apprehensive, as I said, but like sort of like outright, no thanks. Like that's not for me.
Hmm.
We have people that are gonna, resonate with that. In fact, I think many men actually feel that way. Like, I don't need that. I got
Yeah.
my guys that I hang out with and drink beers with on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever,
Yeah.
whenever the sports games are on. Um, Once a person is willing to walk through the door, things can get really shaken up very, very quickly, as it did for me. And I don't know if before that I would have been able to identify that there was like a reason for me to have done it. But now looking back, as I said in my video that I sent you, like this is like a little game changing.
Yeah.
It's like
It
seeing the
is.
Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. So let's go back to the original question. What is the problem that you think men's work as a whole, and then we'll get into the granular, actually solves? Like what is the world facing that men's work actually might help solve?
I think a number of spaces.
Yeah.
One is I think that men haven't been given good role models for what it means to be a healthy man. And healthy means that I'm powerful, that I'm loving, that I'm connected with my own emotions and feelings, that I can feel into yours and connect on that level. And the first one thing I said was powerful. So it's the scope of I can stand strong in my vision for the world and in doing things and creating things and conquering things, but I'm doing it with an open heart,
Mm,
doing it with a connecting heart. And most men get one side or the other. Society say most guys are taught go achieve, whether it's on the football field or the boardroom or the back lot, it doesn't really matter. Go achieve, go conquer. And then we have other men who are taught feel your feelings,
mm,
show your softness. In both of those, that they're different sides of that spectrum. Both of those sides have some validity, but we don't learn how to mesh the two.
right, right.
And so I think that's the first thing. We can go back into if you want, but I think that's the first thing. We don't have good role models for it. I think the other thing is that most men that I come across are lonely. And they might have a partner, they might have friends, but there's like an existential loneliness.
Mm,
And it comes from not feeling really fully understood. I show my friends what I want to show them so we can pal around, but we don't actually get into the deeper stuff. We don't get into here's what feels good in my heart. Here's what hurts my heart.
yeah.
And and that creates a loneliness. If I'm not really known, I'm by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, you've like kind of tucked yourself away and you're only showing like one piece of your wardrobe at a time, as opposed to like just opening it up and like being
Here's what
full.
feels safe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
it's either here's what feels safe because this is what I've been told feels safe, or here's what's safe because I'm scared to show stuff that maybe I have shame around, or maybe just feels too tender to
So it's
share.
a so it's an so some of that apprehension boiling up for modern men, so to speak, is a fear of being judged, judgment or estrangement maybe from a social circle for, I mean, anything from I cried yesterday to I have this existential kink that I'm dealing with. But
Yeah.
to expose yourself and be vulnerable, it opens you up to potential, the stuff that we saw in the locker room. Honestly, it kind
Yeah.
of, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And so what good men's work does is a couple things. But one is it teaches us to be vulnerable and open even through our fear.
Hmm.
It's not that you're going to be on this 6 month program with me. I'm going to teach you to be fearless doing this. It's rather, I'm going to retrain my nervous system so that even when I am in fear, I'm going to step forward and
That's
share
right.
something with you that really is scary.
Mm. I want to take this opportunity for you to introduce the fracture and repair framework. I told you that we were going to have this outline of how we're going to talk, and now I'm already deviating from the plot. But let's put a pin in this, Ted. I want to go back to why do we even need role models? We don't have role models. Who cares? Why do we need role models? I'm going to go back to that. And I want to go back to, let's see, it was the role models and it's the loneliness. I want you to talk a little bit about your own experience with loneliness, specifically as it relates to your efforts to conceive in a past marriage and how that
Mm,
actually led to quite a bit of, let's say, societal castration. I just
man,
came up with that term. But let's put a pin in that and
very
let's,
graphic.
yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, but that probably is how I feel when I'm coming out with something that is deeply hard for me to share. It feels like this could be it. This could be, I mean, it is that I become that fearful. This could be the end of me. And I'm sure a lot of men are holding on to things like that. So let's put a pin in that. But let's, um, as an illustration for what you had said prior, which is that I'm not going to teach you to not be afraid or to just be almighty and powerful. I'm going to teach you to step forward, even though it feels scary. That is actually what came through for me working with you. And as a means of illustrating that, maybe you can just walk me through this framework that you had shared with me as and for a little tiny bit of background, the problem I had brought to you from my own marriage, and for those who don't know, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We are deeply in love. We're madly crazy and frustrated with one another at all times, and that's just life. We have two beautiful daughters. We are doing well financially. Like we've got it all together, and we're still having to do the work. So without numbing it out with substances and everything else. So when something goes awry, I maybe say the wrong thing, or I can tell that Steph's kind of upset about something. I will withdraw because I don't want to be scorned. I don't want the like, what the fuck, man? Like I don't want that. I don't want to put my wife through that, and so I will withdraw. And as a consequence, she is then having to come run after me. And I want you to describe so what you've then kind of counseled me and coached me through is perhaps then what Stephanie's actually asking very directly is she needs you to step forward, and I said I don't know how. So it's more than just wanting to confront that part of me that feels afraid of whatever is going to happen if I come forward. But then there's also a lack of modeling, and there's the role model thing, but there's a lack of modeling. So describe to me how you receive that from a client. Like I pretend like I'm your client still.
um, well, the first part is going
Yeah.
back. Like, where did you first learn that the way to protect yourself was
Yeah.
by shutting down? All the trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Where did those come from? Because they usually came for a good reason. Like in our little child mind,
Right.
it made sense that when someone was mad, the best way to protect myself was to shrink or to push back. Or one of my favorite, as I said a moment ago, fawn. Even though we don't usually talk about fawning, it's a trauma response. It's trying to placate the person. Oh, I'll do better, mommy. Oh, you're so beautiful, mommy. I love you so much. Right. And so there's that part that we really need to dig into. And, as opposed to, kind of typical therapy modalities, it's dipping into it just to have some context, but not to stay back there forever. But then to start recognizing, oh, this is the pattern that I've kept up. So it makes sense. And it's an old story I actually don't need anymore. And so then it becomes a conversation and a practice of how do I regulate my nervous system so that when that happens, Steph or whomever, right, the great she, whether it's your partner or just the storm outside,
Yeah.
how do I, for one, get in touch with what's happening inside? Because most of us have numbed it down. Right? How do I get in touch with what's happening inside and say, oh, that's fear, or that's anger, or that's grief? And then how do I regulate my nervous system so I can stay here in the conversation? And our tendency is to those trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? Others of us who've read, some book on men's work, we say, no, just stand strong like the mountain.
Yeah. The
But it's
stoic.
like stoic, but it's like, hello, are you in there? Right?
Looks sociopathic. Yeah.
Right. So how can we retrain our body so that we are fully grounded? We're feeling the earth, we're feeling out, and I know this is a bit woo-woo, but we're feeling our bodies and we're open to them, that person who's bringing the, the conflicting energy.
Mm.
So a lot of this is how do we retrain? Because most of us are smart enough to read a book and to say, oh, that all makes sense. Logically, I should do this and this and this. It's a good strategy. I can do that and that and that. But it's not until we start catching ourselves. And so one of the things we did right at the beginning was I said, start becoming aware
Yeah.
when you're trying to tap out. You had these certain patterns. When
Yeah.
you were uncomfortable with something, you
I
would,
would be rubbing my beard and like, I don't know, it was like it was detaching. It was sort of. Yeah.
yeah, the self-referencing was a
Mm.
detachment. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have an itch. So we have an itch. But when it's habitual and it's not an itch, but you find yourself going like this, taking a drink, because that's going to soothe you.
Mm.
Looking at your phone secretly, because that's going to soothe you, right? When just our first practice for I think a number of weeks was simply go notice.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to change anything, but go notice because the the um the noticing and the slowing down is where we get to have some choice.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
only in that choice that we have freedom.
Right.
So the first step is let me notice what's happening in my body. My inclination is to do this, whatever it might be. What's the feeling under that inclination? Oh, it's sadness. I like to break it down, that 5 very simple things: mad, sad, glad, shame, fear,
Yeah.
some nuance of one of those. Let me just sit with that. Okay, I have fear right now. Nothing wrong with it unless I judge myself for it. Right? There's nothing, it's just fear. But now I have a choice. Okay, what do I want to do with it? And now I want to engage. Or now I want to say to my wife, hey, love, I need a minute. Right? Not just dropping her, but can we talk about this at 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
Or can we give me just 20 seconds to go kind of shake
Shake
my
something out.
out
Yeah.
of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was the first thing. And I think that that's so important with any kind of self-development, right? Men's work, anything like that. It's to be aware, create an awareness with a lot of love and empathy and grace around it. Just recognizing, okay, this is what's got me here. I don't need to shame myself for having feelings or having the responses I have. This is just how I got here. And then after a while of doing that, then we get to start saying, okay, what do I want to do with it? How do I want to start showing up when
Mm.
it's doing whatever she is doing?
this naturally led to a point where, and I'm going to go back to that framework for fracture and repair, which is actually not rocket surgery, but it's interesting that so few people, like I've shown that, I've shown that exercise to people, not like the PDF, but I mean like in just asking people, like, hey, when you end up in the position where you and your partner are fighting, and by the way, for those of you who don't have kids, welcome to like the world of having to like really grow as a partnership. Like that's one of the biggest strains I think on many relationships is having children. And I know many people listening here are planning to have kids or already have them. And if you haven't had a big fight yet because you're sleep deprived and all this other stuff, or you did this thing that made somebody upset, and then it's like, I don't want to deal with this shit. I get it. I'm there with you. And it'd be really, really nice if somebody had helped us model this. I don't know about you, Ted, but I remember my parents. I don't think, and I shared this with you. I don't remember ever seeing them go through a repair process before. So, like, why? How would I have known how to do this? Um, and it's amazing how when I talk a lot of my guy friends through this now, not that I'm like their guru, but I'm like, what is the process you do? And they're like, I have no idea how to start. And I want to so badly, but I have no clue. So when I asked you about this, you had sent me this. I think I'd asked you on behalf of a friend, and you had sent me this little PDF, which is super simple. And then you had Stephanie and I actually work through it on camera together.
Mhm.
For those who were curious, can you just give like the overview? Like, what is the essence of an actual repair through the lens of like what we would call masculinity in the way that you teach it?
Great, 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 great. By the way, you said you never saw your parents repair. I saw very few fights that my parents had.
Mm, which might even be
So,
worse.
yeah, so few that whenever they did argue, my mind would go to, oh, relationship must be over. My parents are getting divorced. Because there were just so few instances of them doing that. So that when I got into
Mm.
relationships as teens, as an adult, I didn't know how to argue in a healthy way. I certainly didn't know how to repair. I mean, that was like a whole conversation
Oh
later.
yeah,
But even
yeah.
just like, here's how you can actually engage in, you can have conflict without it being the end. And that was a big lesson for me. That was a big lesson I didn't learn until I was in my 40s. I mean, so it was,
That is a big lesson, man. Where you assume that if as soon as you're gonna have a fight that it's all over. I mean, how many early relationships that would have been awesome, they would have gone the distance where you just don't step in and do the work to like, oh my gosh, we had this thing. I told myself this story. We got, like, am I hearing you right? Like just connecting in that way, like how sustaining that can be for the relationship. And instead we're like, nah, it's not the right fit on Tinder because we got in that fight.
exactly, exactly, exactly. And kids don't need to hear all the details,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they do need to know that it's possible to disagree and love each other.
Yeah.
It's possible to be in conflict and repair it. And so the first step, you asked like what's kind of the masculine approach. The masculine approach is creating a container.
Mm.
By that I mean, let me create the structure for repair. And I believe, as you know, that it's important to practice this.
Yeah.
Practice repair with something simple. Practice repair with, you know, uh, I really like red apples, not green apples. Why do you keep buying those? Rather than, you've betrayed me, something like that. Right? Start with
Sleeping
something
with my
simple.
best friend. Yeah.
Right, 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 right. Don't wait for that. Create a pattern where you're regularly in dialogue. And so if something kind of tweaks you, that's that's good to bring that in.
Yeah.
And so then you starts becoming learning when to bring it in. And in the beginning, I think it's super helpful to say Wednesday night, 7 p.m. every week, we're going to spend 30-45 minutes doing some repair work just on a regular basis until it gets into your blood. My teacher always says that we learn to do the scales over and over and over again, and then we
Yeah.
get to play jazz. So learn the structure of this, and then it just becomes natural after a while. You can let go of, like the Wednesday night routine or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's lots of different repair models, but some of I think the thing that connects all of them is we're taking ownership. We're taking ownership. Hey, Nathan, when you said this, I felt like this in my body, and I made up a story that you
Yeah.
didn't like me. I made up a story that you were upset with me. I made up a story that you didn't care about me. Right? We make up all these stories. We're meaning making machines.
Yeah.
So the other person did something, and we made up a story about it. You know, After being with someone for a while, that story might be pretty accurate, right? When they lift up their eyebrow, we might start to know, oh, they're pissed at me, right? But part of it is just stepping into there.
Hmm.
And so it's owning my response without kind of like letting them off the hook. They still might have done something egregious or just, low level that we liked. But first it's recognizing like, okay, here's what's happening for me, so we
Hmm.
can take ownership of it. What's that raising it for you? I see the wheels turning back there.
Yeah. Well, no, I was thinking about a way to introduce how it showed up for me. I think the story that I was telling myself was that by me approaching this and accept taking accountability, and for clarification purposes, taking accountability, you can take accountability for almost anything. You could,
Yep.
even something you and I had talked about in one of our sessions was that even if I totally screwed up, there was actually a part that Stephanie played in the co-creation of that experience, Um, and what I mean by that is, let's say, I'm going to use like the kind of a cliche example, but let's say that somebody in a relationship has an affair. There's probably something that happened that like has been developing over years, decades, perhaps in many relationships. I won't say that's always the case, in which both people played a part in the sort of disintegration of this
Yeah.
community, this
Yeah. Yeah.
union,
Yeah.
this connection. And so for me in my relationship with Stephanie, taking accountability I was very fearful of that. And that was the reason I resisted it. And I would just go inward and kind of run away from it and kind of almost give her the cold shoulder. And she's like, bro, I'm tired of being the one that actually initiates the repair. And I, when we actually started unpacking it, I was afraid that it was going to, the story I was making up is that I screwed up and therefore I'm going to be viewed as incompetent to the love of my life. And I think most men are going to resonate with that because I've heard it now so many times, Ted, since I've learned this process where I'm not going to be lovable anymore. I'm not going to be whatever. And as a consequence of me being incompetent, I'm a burden to this person. So I know that there's a part of your story that also kind of flashes in that pan there alongside me. We're two like just simmering pieces of bacon. Oh, you don't eat bacon, but perhaps you
So,
can dive into
so
that a little bit.
yeah. Well, for one, self-loathing is really
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
A lot of men have a lot of self-loathing. If you really knew me, you wouldn't love me because I don't really love me.
Right. Right. I'm a bad person.
Bad person. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking about mentors. We'll come back to this. We were talking about mentors earlier, and I think we have to look back and say, okay, my father was Vietnam War era. His father was World War II era. His father was World War I era. These men went off to battle. And even if they actually didn't go to battle, they were living in a time period with lots of angst and violence and death
Yeah.
I think so many came out with PTSD and no one really knew how to
We didn't even
address
have
it.
a word for that back then
No, we didn't have
either.
a word for it. And
Yeah.
we still don't do a good job addressing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those were our, and we keep going back and back and back, right? I mean, most every generation had something. My own lineage was one of escaping from one country after another because of war and hatred and stuff like that. So we have this stuff built into us that's epigenetic, and we have this stuff taught to us that's just word to word. But a lot of these men, especially women too, but men especially, had traumas, and so they didn't have the tools to
Yeah.
teach their kids how to be healthy in this world. They had to
Mm.
shield themselves,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so that's going to come up again when we're in an argument. Right? I need to protect myself. I need to hide myself because what's inside is kind of a monster, and I'm scared of him. If
Yeah.
I was in war, maybe that monster was capable of killing another person,
Right. Right. Right.
or leaving a loved one behind, or whatever it might have been. So we're dealing with lots and lots of stuff that we're carrying. And so teaching a way to repair is super important, but also just teaching that, hey, we can get into these tough places and still repair and still love each other. And so, I walked you and Steph through this process of of bringing the kind of the complaint, having the other person speak it back to them. Oh, you said this. Did I get that right? One is just to make sure the other person heard us, and then to empathize, to put it in our own words. So not only can I say the exact words that you said, but I can actually feel into it.
Mm.
I get what you're saying on a
Right.
deeper level
Right.
using my own words, and did I get that right? And often that's enough to clear up any kind of miscommunication, any kind of conflict. It's just, can he hear me?
Right. Right.
Because that thing we talked about earlier, loneliness for men, when someone doesn't hear us, then we're lonely. So I was saying men are really lonely. There are a lot of women in relationships with men who are also lonely.
Mm. Yeah, I have a client recently, and I was actually walking them through this type of conversation recently, and they had developed some issues, women's health issues, we'll just say. And she's probably in her mid 50s, and she had been in a marriage for 20, 30 years, and then met some new man who actually had done some men's work. And I had them on the phone together, and I was talking to them about, we'll just call her Joan or whatever. How Joan had been in this relationship where the man actually that she was playing the masculine and the feminine role in their relationship, and as a consequence her femininity, which hadn't been nurtured, hadn't been nourished, hadn't been celebrated for 20 odd years, however long. They had grown children now, that the health of her like physical corpus, like her physical beauty and being, started deteriorating because she wasn't being nurtured. Her feminine wasn't being nurtured, and she was carrying this load for both of them. And then she met this guy who, and I'll let you describe how you define masculine and feminine,
Yeah, we
right?
should. Yeah.
He was grounded, he was strong, he was immovable, and he was willing to create that container for her to be her full the full expression of her femininity as she possibly could or wanted to after all those years of kind of having to do both. And she started flourishing. But then, I had reflected on that as a means of working as a partnership on nurturing these energetics as actually a part of her therapeutic regimen, which was entirely on them. And this is a time, a nice segue into like the importance of masculine and feminine. And now actually these are just as important perhaps as our vital signs. with regards to how long our health span, our lifespan, whatever else,
Yeah.
our relationship, the depths of our relationship. So, um, maybe you can do that. I feel like we're
Yeah.
bouncing around now, but
So
I'd love to
we're
hear
kind of
that.
going all over the
Yeah,
place, and
yeah, yeah,
we can always hop back and
yeah,
do another 10 hours on any of these subjects.
yeah, for
Um,
real.
so I'm gonna put it into real basic terms.
Yeah.
For one, the lineage that I hold, that I carry, is one that we all have a masculine and a feminine. I have both, you have both, everyone has both. Some are more expressed than others, some are more exercised than others. We have a facility more for them. But in kind of basic terms, like this container is the masculine. Everything inside of it is the feminine.
Mm,
So structure is the masculine. Everything that animates life is the feminine.
yeah.
Consciousness is the masculine. Emotion is the feminine. Creativity is the feminine. Saw this so clearly. I used to do a lot of works with chiefs of staff, and very often it was like in Silicon Valley kind of chiefs of staff. Some in the military, but mostly commercial, mostly in companies. And often the chief of staff was a woman in her late 20s
Hmm.
who got things done. I mean, they were like powerhouses. They could run
Boss lady.
programs. I mean,
Yeah.
they were powerful, but they were a chief of staff for their exec. Their role was to hold the structure so the chief exec could be in their feminine. Men or women, didn't really matter. In their feminine, which is what their genius, which is what got them usually there. Their creativity, and oh, here's our next product, or here's how we step differently into the world, or here's how we work with these boards. Like there was something, here's how we raise money. It was those things were like their genius. And the stronger the chiefs of staff were in their position, the better their execs could do. But
Mm,
invariably, these women, they were mostly women that I met with, would burn out
yeah.
because they were so focused on their masculine, they didn't nourish their own feminine, their own creativity, their own love, their own
Flow.
letting go, their own flow. Exactly. And so I see it in relationships all the time, also, where a powerful woman has stepped in and is holding the family and is holding her profession and is holding, parenting or whatever she's holding. And the man isn't really stepping in to lead. And I say that carefully, lead, because there's so many women I meet who say, I don't want a man to lead me. Like I've got this. But there's something inside of us that actually does want someone to lead. Right. So just a simple example, you know, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner? I'll go wherever you want. I'll go. Yeah, it's fine. Whatever you want is fine. Right. How does that feel versus, hey, I was thinking of Thai food or Mexican food tonight, which would feel better for you?
Mm,
For my feminine and for many other people in their feminine, especially women, that feels pretty good to be led in that way, not forced, right? To have some agency, but just for someone to say, hey, I got this.
right. Right.
You can rest, you can relax. And for so many powerful women, it's super hard because it takes a surrender.
Yeah.
And they have experience that says every time I surrender, there's no one to step in a healthy way.
Right.
I didn't have that as a kid or my last relationship or whatever it is. And so I can't afford to surrender because I'm just going to end up on the floor.
Right. Right. There's nobody there who
There's,
they can
there's no one there to
actually
catch me.
bear me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, let me wrap this back around. When in my first marriage, we were going through fertility,
Yeah.
infertility. And 6, 7 years of IVF and failed pregnancies and miscarriages, just one after another. And at that time, so this was 25 to 18 years ago, 18 to 25 years ago, um, there was no support for men. My role was to support my wife. I had to be the container. I had to hold ground because she needed space to be in her feelings. Her body was going through a tremendous amount with all the different injections and all
Sure.
kinds of stuff. It
Yeah.
was going through a tremendous amount.
Modern medicine is very masculine in it's just in general,
Oh,
especially that
right.
process.
Yeah, especially that. And there was no place for me to feel my feels, for me to be held. And so that actually over time created a tremendous amount of distance and eventually led to the end of our marriage because my feminine needed to be nurtured also. But I
Mm,
thought I had to just be there strong for my wife without taking care of myself, much like these chiefs of staff need to be strong for their exec without taking care of themselves.
right.
It was
Right.
actually only years later that I happened to be in a doctor's office, not a fertility office, just a random doctor's office, and I saw a sign of some support group for men going through infertility. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a life changing event that would have been if I had had men that I could go to and be held by them. This kind of wraps back around to men's work.
Yeah.
If I had men that would hold me and love me, but also sharpen me, meaning challenge my own stories. When I bring up this self loathing of we can't have a baby or something like that, to hold me and console me in it, and also to challenge me in it.
The sacred dick.
So just to put some context into that term, sacred dick.
We're not talking about cock worship here. We're talking about
no,
yeah.
no, but so my teacher is John Wineland told me that or taught that you can be a dick, right? You just be a jerk to someone, tell them things that like really hurt, they're really sharp, really cutting, or a sacred one, which also might be cutting, but it's actually for their benefit, for their growth, for their healing, for their journey in life. So for me, the thing that men's groups do is they hold you so generously with their love. They give you a place to be super vulnerable
Mm.
and they sharpen you at the same time. Most men's groups I see don't do both those things. So, something very important for me when I'm creating men's groups or training other people for men's groups is to teach them how to be sharp, how to give good, healthy, strong feedback that's going to rock that person, but to rock them from a place of, hey, man, I love you. And I'm going to rock you, but I'm also going to hold you through this.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this alone. The whole lone wolf nonsense, it's nonsense.
Right.
we
Right.
don't we can't do life on our own. Not in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So that's masculine and feminine. That's we our feminine needs to be nourished. It's nourished often with music and things that feel good in our body or even on our body.
Right.
Dance, not just being out in nature. And our masculine is the solidity. It is consciousness. It's recognizing that there's that part in me that's never changed and never will change, that inner core of who I really am. So
Yes.
ideally we nourish both those parts in us. We don't want to be all the way over here. We don't want to be all the way over there. Someone who's uber masculine is like just a rock, and who's uber feminine is just like the wind, right? We want to find that place where they meet. That's unique for me. It's unique for you.
Yeah. When you were describing the sort of masculine expectations on women earlier, that may have not been what you actually said, but I think we all know that there's an implication there that, you know, we actually glorify the boss, you know, boss lady who's got three kids and is the CEO and is this and that. And they have a myriad of TV shows on Netflix and everywhere else that shows how that goes wrong. Like there's the burnout, there's the wheels falling off, there's the fatigue, there's the divorce, there's the affairs, there's the I'm not getting my needs met in the bedroom, there's all of that. And there's one part of this that was relevant for me, which is very surprising for people to hear. But I remember I used to kind of complain to my wife that she doesn't initiate sex often enough. And it wasn't a complaint, it was just more of like an observation. Like, oh, it's a bummer that, you know, I always have to be the one that initiates, right? And now, after having worked with you, I can actually see this for what it is. And I think I'm probably having more sex than most people my age
You can
with
see it
two
for
little
what it is.
children,
You can see it for what it is, which is what?
which is that she finishes her day in this very masculine role. And then she actually wants me to take control, to be the leader, and to actually initiate and engage with her and let her fall back into that feminine space. So it's actually an act of guiding her into that space. And that is the most attractive thing for her if we were to engage in some way. And that has actually made a world of difference in our intimate the intimate part of our relationship, which with kids I know is hard. But to expect a woman who's serving this masculine role to then do the masculine thing and initiating sex as well is just too much. It's too much to ask of her. And since I've, you know, kind of shifted a little bit there, everything else has just been, it just kind of falls into place. So that's been a very healthy
And
accessory now in our life.
yeah, it's beautiful. And just to be clear, we're not talking about going into outdated modes of what does the husband do, what does the wife do,
Right, right,
kind of thing, right?
right, right.
It's not that. It's recognizing our inner energies.
Yeah.
And some of us need more of one thing than the other. Um, but it's so hard for most women to move from their masculine into their feminine. One, because of the fear we were talking about earlier, like who's going to catch me? And another, because they haven't been trained to do it.
Mm.
Just like men have not really been trained how to feel their emotions.
Yeah.
There's no
At least
fault
isn't
zone
practiced.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not. And so, one of the, I think, beautiful things that someone can do is learn how to help their partner drop into their feminine.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to, I cleared out the schedule for you. Go and have some fun. You had made the point, like draw her the bath, walk her to the bath,
Right,
help her get in
right,
the bath, and then say,
right,
I'm going to come back in an hour or more. And I
right.
want you to really relax here. Just lean in.
But and certainly rather than wronging them,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you never do this.
Mm.
There is a conversation to be had, not in the heat of the moment, but hey, love, I would love it if when you felt that inkling, like you wanted to be intimate, whatever intimacy means, right? It might be snuggling on the couch or sex or whatever it might be. That my invitation is that you go with it.
Mm.
But that's coming from a place. I kind of lowered my voice and slowed down. And it doesn't have to be so dramatic, but that's from a place of not you're wrong or how come you can't do it. You know, on TV they do it. On whatever it is. My friend's wife does this, but from a place of my own, like, oh, this would feel really good in my body, which is my own feminine.
Mm.
Feel really good in my body if sometimes you would lead. And most women will say yes. Hey, love, can I just I need 5 minutes just to totally break down can you hold me in this? Most women, from place of devotion, they're like, yes.
Hmm.
Doesn't feel good to always be in that role or to be assumed or burdened them, but to say, hey, I'm having a tough time.
Yeah. And even that, it brings up a little inkling of like, oh, I don't want to bring that up because they might say no, or they might reject me, or they might think it's weird, or they might think I'm a sissy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a constant battle for men to be hearing this, which is why I think actually this is a shameless plug for working with you because I'll be working with you again. It's it really requires like a coach that's like holding you accountable in the most sacred dickness way possible. um, yeah, I mean, this is really, really hard. This is really, really hard stuff when you haven't had role models.
It is hard. Yeah.
And one other thing I want people to realize is we have this who wrote the book Mr. Nice Guy?
Robert
Glover.
Glover.
So we have this tendency for Mr. Nice Guy to emerge as well. And I didn't plan on talking about this, but I kind of want to get into the evolution of men over the past several decades
Mhm.
because I know we're coming up on time here too. But the I think a lot of people would say, you know, I'm a nice guy. Why don't I have this or that?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I have found that I have some of those tendencies. Like most men, I think I've ever really had any engagement with. We all kind of just want to be this guy that's, you know, that is like the friendly, unthreatening man.
Mhm.
And while that's true, in a world where there's every headline has some threat of a man, you know, potentially
Awful.
around every
Right.
corner. I mean, I get that. Like, I'm not diminishing that or the importance of us men being aware of that. However, when it comes at the cost of um, almost like, I was so nice. Why didn't you do this thing for me? That's where I think we start to see this degrade. And so maybe you could just walk us through the sort of
Yeah.
the evolution of like how the men in the 60s and the men in the 70s and how we got up to here and how Mr. Nice Guy kind of fits in there because there's a lot of confusion as to how men think women want them to be like you want me to be like the bad boy. I mean, you see this kind of language
Right.
all over the place and it's
Right.
so
Right. Right.
confusing. Yeah.
Right. Right. But so just to start, I picked up the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, and started reading it. I may have told you this. I started yelling at it, kind of like "fuck you for knowing me so well." And then I called up the author, and I said, "I want to come study with you." And so I did some training with him. We've since become dear friends. Robert Glover, of
Wow, I didn't know that.
One
I
Point
didn't know
Eight.
that about
Yeah,
that about you.
and we've been in a men's group now for 7 years. We just
Wow.
hit the 7 year mark. Meet every other week. Um, so yeah, that language changed my life, and I went back to him actually and said, okay, here's the piece that you're missing, which is the embodiment part.
Is there any
That
part of
was
what I said that you would disagree with or change, just in case people don't have context?
no. So I'm going to get to that.
Okay,
I,
good.
I
Got
I
it.
think you're right on. Yeah, I think you're right on. But I just want to go back to that. We have to retrain our bodies. It's a nervous system. That thing of I don't want to reveal myself is not really I don't want to reveal myself because it's shameful, but I won't be able to hold it together. Right? I'll shrivel up and die, kind of thing. So if we look back through history, as far back as we can go, we know that men would circle as men. They go on the hunt, they come back, they sit in a circle around a fire, rebuilding all the testosterone, everything building back up inside of them as they rest. And they go on a hunt again. And for some of our ancestors, that was longer ago than others. But there have always been places where men had men. And I think, as I said before, like different traumas coming through that really colored how these men evolved. But then in the 60s, we saw this big pushback. We saw this big pushback with the whole peace movement, and we saw the flower power and recognized the importance of men being able to drop the machismo or the corporate, I'm going to put my hat and tie on and go off to work and be home at 5 for dinner that you're going to have made for me. Like, we need to drop those things and move into a more modern era of what it means to be a man in the world. And I think it was kind of a pendulum swing.
Yeah, right. That's what it sounds like.
So we
Two
went from this
extremes.
place of, right, here's the old role model to shoop, here's the new one where we're all about flow, all about feelings, all about what feels good. And in that, that's what I grew up in, 70s, was we needed to be soft. And for many of us, we grew up in homes where the woman was the primary caregiver, right? Dad may have been there, may not have been there at all, or may have been there, but kind of emotionally detached.
Yeah.
And so our mothers were the caregiver. In school, often, certainly for me, my first male teacher, I think, was in high school, maybe one in junior high, but it was predominantly women. And so I grew up with this, I need to push away all those things
Yeah.
that were rough, right? You know, playing out in the woods and, running around and being rough and tumble. I need to push all those things away. I need to soften myself for the women in my life to love me. I sought their approval so that they would love me. That's a nice guy,
Yeah.
as opposed to a good guy or an integrated guy. Let's define this. So a nice guy is trying to please others, especially women, to get something in return.
Right.
Not just
Right.
to please, right? There's a value of, I just want to please you because I want to please you. Like, I don't need anything back. Like, I'm just a loving guy, and I let that's it. But the nice guy, which I see everywhere, is the one who's giving to get. I'm going to be nice to you and say all the right things, and then you're going to give me your love, your body,
That's
your
right.
devotion. At work, I'm going to do all the right things, and you're going to give me a raise, and you're going to give me awards, and you're going to give me whatever's. So it's a lot of that. I'm going to give to get, and underneath that is actually a self-loathing. If you really saw who I was, you wouldn't give me what I want. Because in fact,
Mm.
I wouldn't give me what I want. I'm dark and you know demented, whatever, underneath.
Right.
And so all those shadowy things, all those things that are kind of considered dark, taboo, we're gonna push away. We're gonna deny, ignore, try to bury somewhere. And instead, I'm going to try to be pleasing this woman, just showing that good side of me, but at the same time, having some angst around it and wanting something in return and feeling like, well, if you really saw me, you wouldn't want me. So I'm going to hide that part.
Mm.
So it's an awful codependency
Mm-hmm.
way to
Mm-hmm.
look at it. But nice guys are the ones who show up in the world as doing all the right things, but they're still feeling kind of lost because they're not getting what they wanted. They show up doing all the right things. Everything from the outside looks fine, but you sometimes feel like, what else is going on there? Like, there's something that seems to be amiss. Like, there's an anger he's carrying.
Right.
There's something underneath that's bubbling. And it's all from this place of, I'm trying to please people and I actually don't like myself.
Yeah. There's this notion of like the friend zone as well, which actually is the sort of manifestation, the consequential manifestation of that thing where it's I almost feel like my wife's pretty in tune with things, but I almost feel like if she feels like somebody's like a nice guy, they're automatically friend zone because she doesn't trust them. She's not actually seeing them for who they are.
Nice guys are not
And
trustable at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're
right,
hiding. And they get friend zoned, and then they think, oh, I just need to be that badass whatever, and they'll treat me better.
right,
Right. Then I'll get the women.
right. They're missing the point.
They're missing the point.
Yeah.
Right. What those women are wanting is someone who is connected to their core. Right. Much safer to be with someone who can explore their anger and their jealousy and their whatever dark stuff that could get in the way. Better for them to own it powerfully than it is to say, oh, that's not me.
Mm.
I'm more spiritual than that.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
more intelligent than that. Right. That's
right,
not me.
right,
Those
right.
people, those guys who are hiding that, there's like, they're not trustable.
Yeah. Well,
Which,
it's a
I'll
facade.
just own, which is me.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us have a part of this in us. At
Yeah.
least at some point we did. We try it on and it works for a little while until it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people never hear that term. They never actually are willing to receive that, what you just said. And I see it I mean, I see it in all ages too. This is not like a juvenile thing. If anything, it's actually more of a problem for older men. I mean, 30s and 40s maybe, because because they've also forgotten where the key is hiding, under their mother's pillow. Like, to go back to the Iron John story, they've got everything. They've got mother culture. They've got this Mr. Nice Guy thing. They have no role models. They're lonely, and they have the perfect storm of things that lead to this really confronting illusion that is only then, I think, unveiled when they have somebody like you who's actually able to walk them through this and help them, like you let me see you, Ted, and that gives me permission to let you see me. And that is what I think, coming back to this sort of the center here, is the men's group. The men's work stuff is so helpful. And as a
There's a
yeah.
section of men's work where they swing into also the red pilled guys, right? The red pill guys who are the incels, the people who are just
Oh yeah.
angry. They're
Yeah, the
angry at
Andrew
women.
Tate people. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're just anger, anger, anger. And what they miss is that no one's doing this to them.
Mm, mm,
They're doing it to themselves, and they can change it. It's just a muscle. Learning to be trustable, not just to say the trustable things, right? But to actually be trustable, learning to be trustable is a muscle. And so it takes a practice, a muscle memory for the soul, is what I usually call it. It's a
hmm.
deepening, it's a slowing down, it's a feeling into really the core of self, recognizing the ripples that you put out into the world, having a consciousness of that.
Yeah,
And that is something that can be learned. It just takes practice.
right.
It takes a willingness to slow down and recognize there's no shortcut.
We got one more question for you, Ted. And um, it's gonna relate to MDMA. I remember who's Rick? What's Rick's name? The Maps guy. Um,
Dobson.
Rick. What's his last name?
Dobson.
Dobson. Rick Dobson.
Dobson.
I remember him saying at some point in some interview years, maybe over a decade ago, he said, I was really into LSD, and then I was on the Harvard lawn or something, and everybody had just discovered ecstasy, and he said, I realized this might be the most important chemical that we've ever come upon. And this was probably in the 90s, if I had to guess, maybe early 2000s. And I want to ask you, you've been doing this work for a long time, and now you actually use MDMA as a facilitator, so to speak, as a
Sometimes, yeah.
yeah. Sometimes I'm working with couples, and I'm curious why you think MDMA is so helpful, given everything we've kind of just laid the whole groundwork for appreciating why people are still stuck in the mud. They might read From the Core, which is Wineland's book. It's an amazing book. David Deida. You go get Iron John. You go get The
Yeah.
Magician, King, Warrior, Lover, whatever. I mean, you get every single book, and you're still kind of like, well, now what? And you and your partner may never even get out of the mud. And then when you start to realize that there's all these barriers, like you've got so many of these layers upon layers of detriments to the work itself. And then maybe you take a dose of MDMA and suddenly everything is clear for a moment. I'd like for you to just expand on that a little bit, elaborate on that for me. Like why is that molecule so relevant to this work, to especially with couples?
Doblin, by the way, Rick Doblin.
Goblin, that's right.
Uh, Doblin.
Goblin.
Um, it's a tool. You say, I think you said it's so necessary to the work. It's not necessary to the work. It's a tool.
Hmm.
It's a good tool. It's a tool that shows what's possible in a relationship. And that can be relationship to self, relationship to other, relationship to the divine. I mean, it shows you what's possible because it takes down kind of the layers of you know it pulls the curtains back.
Yeah.
I guess is the
Yeah.
way to say
Parts the clouds, right?
it. Yeah. In relationship, we're often able to say the things that we couldn't say before because our nervous system wasn't letting us. Our nervous system was still saying, hey, it's not safe to do this. And the person who's listening can listen in a different way where they don't feel threatened. It's pretty amazing. Um,
It is really amazing. I mean,
yeah.
um, there's really nothing that really gets you there that quickly. Um,
So it shows you what's possible in this
mm,
sense. But I'll say a couple, I think, important things about it. One is that some people ask me, where should they go? Can they just buy it and whatever? Dot, 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 dot. It's my belief that a guided journey is best. And when people are asking, like, how do I know it's a good guide? I'd say it's someone who can coach me without medicine.
mm, mm-hmm.
Because the medicine is just a tool. Breath work is a beautiful tool.
Yeah.
The right music and movement can get you to a similar place. That's a beautiful tool. Uh, Conversation, embodiment work, somatic work, those are tools. And if your guide can't do that without the medicine, I think you have the wrong guide, personally. I might get some flack for that, but I think you might have the wrong guide. And so for some of my clients, we get to here, and sometimes we're like, oh, we're here, and we can't get through it. And this is a new tool to use. Maybe this will help you break through. And for some, you can get all the way to here, and like we're good, but now we just want to explore what else is there. And I've just had some wonderful experiences with people. Some people who have been married for decades. I had this one couple who were in their 70s. They've been married for decades and decades, and they came out of this experience saying, "Oh, we didn't even know we needed to have this conversation. This was so great." The other thing that
Wow.
I think is really important, and as far as I know, I'm the only one who's actually doing this, is that I bring embodiment work into practice.
Yeah. Tell me about that. You've done
Yeah,
some of that work with me too.
yeah. So, um, like I have a program coming up where we're going to do this. We'll meet beforehand, have a number of sessions beforehand where we teach embodiment work. We teach conscious conversation. Maybe it's repair work. We teach movement. We teach stillness. And then in the day of medicine, we drop back into that place. And then we have our body doing something. We have our heart just blasted open and we connect the two.
Mm.
So that weeks and months later, I'm feeling like, man, I can't really feel you. Like I can't connect with you. But then I say, oh, you know, back in that time, we're in this journey. So I don't need to go take medicine right now. I can just go like my my hips a little bit and it just takes me right back there. So my body has learned this movement, which isn't so complicated, any kind of movement. Like it's associated with open heart.
Hmm.
And so I'm drawn right back into it because we don't want medicine to be like, oh, I need to always go take this thing to be connected to you, but rather from that experience that we had months ago or years ago, when I want to connect with you, I'm feeling like this dissonance or just on my own. Like, can I feel joy in my body? Yeah, I can just kind of bring myself back into that moment, like, oh, yeah, that's joy. So it's a process of bringing embodiment work into this space.
Yeah. Where
And
did you
again,
learn that? Like, what was the tradition, or is it just something you developed on your own?
something I realized on my own.
Wow.
And I was a big naysayer to medicine for years. No, we don't need that. That's a, kind of the same reason like I don't like men. I just had these judgments, all kinds of judgments. And someone asked me about doing a program on Jews and mushrooms. And I said, Jewish part I can do. I don't know anything about mushrooms. And so started exploring it though, and then MDMA and recognize, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
If I pair it, so I started just moving. I started really paying attention to what my body was doing. And it was a solo. It was me and I had a guide there. But she was really just holding space. I started recognizing, oh, here's what's possible. And so I just took that and developed it and have been working with it for a couple of years with lots and lots of couples and individuals and seeing how it's just so true.
Yeah.
When we teach our body something, our emotions and connections can follow. So it's not right for everyone for whatever reasons. People aren't, they might be taking medications that conflict with it, or they just might not be wanting to do that. And it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, please go talk to your doctors, everybody.
Yeah.
This is an
Yeah.
amphetamine. This is not necessarily for everybody,
No.
and there's some incredible benefits. You have to consider risks and benefits for everything. I can't wait to do that type of work with you. I think that's the next step for me and Stephanie. Like I said, you've got a huge fan in my wife because I think I mean, we have a really great relationship, and there were still some sticking points that are just, these paths that the elephant inside of me has gotten so accustomed to this circuit, and we just needed him to break off a little bit, become a little plastic up in there, in my sort of experience as Stephanie's husband, and just find a new path through the woods. Let's try this loop over here. But that takes courage. There's all these barriers, and having a coach like you really, really did help me with that. So thank you. And I do think that the MDMA assisted part of this is, I'm kind of like, I think we're kind of like that 70-year-old couple where it's like things are great, and we'd love to see how it would feel to explore this direction here through the
Yeah.
woods. And
Yeah.
we've of course done that together, but not with a facilitator like you. So, is there anything else, anything else that's coming up for you, Ted, that might be interesting to people? I know you have this 5-day free program, Facebook Live, but then maybe
I,
some other ways that people can
I have
seek
a
you out.
5-day free program coming up. I run some men's groups here in the Bay Area. I do lots of one-on-one coaching and one-on-two coaching. Sometimes I bring my wife into it with me, and she coaches with me. We're actually going to be coaching together at a festival called Firelight up in
Oh, wow.
Mendocino at the beginning of June.
In
Um,
Mendocino?
yeah, and
Wow.
then I have another woman I work with named Leslie Grace, and we're doing a program together for couples. We have one space open. That's May 24th. It'll involve a lot of some medicine, but also a lot of movement and embodied work. Um, I have a book coming out, and lots of stuff happening.
Are you going to send me a copy? Can you sign it?
I will sign it. I will send a copy to
Yes.
you. It's called
Yes.
49 Days to Deeper Connection
Wow.
and the Daily Practice. But I think the so I mean, those are things I'm doing. You can also just look me up, and I guess the information will be somewhere down below here. I think the other thing that's super important is that if you're not fully expressed in your relationship, if you're not just feeling like, yeah, I'm choosing you every day, and that's the amazing thing to me.
Yeah.
That I used to believe in like we have a soulmate, and I've kind of let that go, recognizing that actually there are a lot of people that I could really have powerful connections with, and still, what makes it special about the relationship I have is I choose my wife every day. There are other people, and I choose her.
Mm.
Choose her every single day. If you're not in a relationship like that, if you're in a relationship maybe where you feel like you're doing all the work and your partner's not, or you don't even know how to do the work, there's a path. Don't give up, and don't wait till things go sideways. A lot of my work is, I mean, wasn't with you, but a lot of my work is when people are in crisis. You
Yeah.
know, they I wish they had come to me months earlier, years earlier. I started down, took a turn in my career because I was in crisis. Because I had really just kind of ruined my whole life,
Do you want to share
frankly.
any of that? That's kind of an incredible story, I have to say.
We can go there too.
I mean, whatever you
Yeah.
want to share. I know that we're getting long-winded
Yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah.
but I mean, yeah, I mean,
So by the way,
yeah.
me going like this was me being uncomfortable. A
You
good
prompted me to
self-reference.
look at my hair, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh
you did
yeah,
too.
my hair looks
You look great.
okay.
You look great. Um, yeah, I had all the things that everyone would want. I had a lot of uh, responsibility. By profession, I was a rabbi, large congregation in Southern California, and lots of accolades, lots of honor. Had finally adopted. We had a child, married already 20 plus years by that point. And my loneliness and my disconnect and my feelings of shame and my feelings of my self-loathing and my nice guy stuff, rather than bringing it out in a healthy way and saying, hey, this is something I need to work on.
Right.
At that time, I don't know where the resources is, but I'll find them. They were there. They were just a little harder to find those days. It came out sideways.
Mm.
And I just totally collapsed my relationship with my wife and my job and my profession, and got pretty dark where I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure tomorrow is worth it.
Yeah.
If I had had the support that I hope I'm giving to people, if I had had that support at that time,
Very different story.
different story. I mean, it might not be
Mm.
doing what I'm doing now, frankly. Right? It might still be in a synagogue
Rabbiing.
somewhere or doing something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
so it is. I would say often it's the worst thing I ever did and the best thing that ever happened to me. And so I get a lot of individuals and couples who are in a similar place, and
Mm.
it looks different flavor. It looks different, but they're in the place of crisis. We don't know what to do next. Um, that's some powerful work. I love doing that work. It's more gratifying. I don't know, more gratifying.
Yeah.
It's just as important to do it before you get there.
Right.
So
Right.
for anyone who's like in this place of struggle and disconnect and confusion, and I want something more, I just don't even know what it is. See me. If we're not a good connection, I'll connect you with someone. I know lots of people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know lots of coaches,
Yeah.
uh, women's coaches, men's coaches, co-ed coaches. Find that support. It's not just the 55-minute hour therapy session that you grew up hearing about, right? There are very powerful ways to get past those blockages
Right. Right.
through talk, but through embodiment, through medicine sometimes. There's
Yeah.
ways. Don't let it come to crisis. And if you do, you can dig out of that too.
Yeah, there's still something
There's
more,
still
you know.
lots of hope.
Yeah.
I dug out of it. You can do it too. Yeah.
Ted, thank you so much. I know you're busy. I know you're highly sought after, and I hope some people who hear this that I mean, this is one of those tools I have to reference now for the rest of my life, and I feel very grateful for you and a lot of love for you, actually. Um, it'll sound a little cliche, but like, thank you for doing the work you do in the world. But I actually mean that. This is the intangible, the really, really hard stuff that I didn't learn in med school. I didn't realize I was going to be thrust in that position to lead men's groups, and you're also helping me with that. This is a big blind spot in our society, and it really is. It's very, very important. And I hope that people will seek you out. And when your book comes out, we're going to blow that one up too.
All right.
So,
Thanks, David.
so thanks
Thank
again,
you.
and we'll see you. I'll be there for that 5 day event on
Great.
Facebook, at least for
Fantastic.
the parts that I can attend,
Hmm.
and I look forward to more working more with you.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your love. I not just, by hosting me here, by inviting me here, but I have to say, every time we had a call together, I just always was super excited
Oh, good.
because
Me too.
you were totally there with me, and you had surrendered
Mm,
into, as a very successful person who doesn't,
yeah.
like, need
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. You had surrendered into this process, and it was just so much fun working with you, and certainly seeing what you and Steph are creating together in life. So thank you.
Like I said, I'm a fan. She's like a fan girl. Like she is like everybody needs a Ted Riter in their life.
Oh,
So
thanks.
I hope others feel the same. But Ted, thank you so much. And and we'll put everything for those listening. We're going to put everything related to Ted's work in the little description here in the blog post. So thanks again, Ted.